Welcome to this episode of Generating Conversations and Creating Clients. And this is a really episode. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for this that I don't even know what I'm going to say, apparently. This is a very special episode because we have gone through a whole series of interviews and we have brought someone amazing back named Julian. And he's actually going to interview me because this is a wrap up episode. This series was inspired by the AJC Coaching Career School where we met. And we've interviewed so many amazing people about the way that they generate conversations, create clients. And the reviews and listeners have said that this has really been super helpful to them. And as the AJC school has ended, I wanted to wrap up this series. I will be continuing more conversations in a different way, which we'll talk about at the end. But right now, I brought Julian back. He is going to interview me. He has shared so many of these episodes with his clients and people in his world and has made such a difference that I thought, who better than to help wrap up the series? So, Julian, I'll let you introduce yourself. I have no idea what questions you're going to ask me or anything. And so I'm really excited for this.
James, my brother, thank you so much for creating this opportunity for us to be together today. When I received your message about this, not only was I honored that you thought of me, because as you know, I am a big fan of this show. I've watched as I was flexing on you before. I knew a lot of the episode titles, their themes, the guests. And it's true, I have sent them a lot of the episodes, I've sent them around to clients. I've shared them in one of the communities that I run. I put them there as resources, and the feedback has always been off the charts. Like the feedback from all parties involved that I've sent to has always been something along the lines of, there's so much gold in here that I need to watch this like three times over. Right. And that was really the congruent message I kept receiving. And I concur with that. And I'm not going to start naming all of them because that's not what we're here for. This is not a fan episode. This is, like you said, a closure to a beautiful series that you've run and so generously have chosen to share with the world. Like, not only have I gotten so much out of it, but the ripple effect that has been created from that one idea that you had, and being of service has just been a beautiful example. So let me just start by saying thank you for your generosity, your time, and your willingness to be of service for not only the AJC community, but the coaching community at large and beyond. Because yes, your videos are not only for coaches. I think that although they are coaching themed and they seem to resonate around that theme of creating conversations and generating coaching clients, they can serve business leaders, owners, executives, founders, and really any profession that is service driven as well. So thank you for your service and for this idea today. As you said, I also have no clue what questions I'm going to ask you. We'll see what comes up as this emerges, and I just feel very blessed to be here. So let me just start by saying that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now, in terms of the theme that we have, and that really has been running this series across generating conversations and creating clients, maybe the first question that we can begin with, James, that really I am curious about is, and that's really coming up for me, is what has shifted for you as it relates to creating conversations and creating clients when you first started the series to how you see it now as you wrap it up? Because it's been how many months?
Oh my gosh. I would have started it last summer. So it's probably been almost a year of these interviews.
So maybe you can share with us, how did you view creating conversations and creating clients a year ago prior to starting this, and how are you leaving this series with what you've experienced here, what you've put in practice, what some of the interviewees have shared with you that you've taken, and just through life? That's
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, like many people, I originally would hear the context of service, and I would really just think of reaching out to people to see how they are, to help them to catch up. And yes, that is useful. However, I'd say my relationship with it changed because as someone is on this journey of service, I actually view it as much more of a spiritual practice, in a sense of how can I tap into care and love and come from that place. Because I've heard so many people speak about service, that as I've been on this journey, as I've heard people share their challenges with service, it's almost like it's so easy to get caught up in how do I find this balance where I hear these people saying, "Oh, I'm of service, but I don't do it for the money. I just do it to serve." And if we're looking, the truth of how pretty much all of us find service is we would like more clients and we'd like more money. And so there's an entry point there that I think some people think isn't okay. And so to me, all of these questions on service and generating conversations and creating clients, I think originally it maybe was this tug of war between am I doing this okay? Am I doing this in an ethical way? Is it unethical to want money but still help somebody? Like where does all of this fall? And that's not necessarily what I felt I had a challenge with, but I just noticed that so much of it came up in questions that people had, and it would inspire a lot of the interviews. That on the other side of that, a year later, having been in the AJC, having spent more time doing work with Steve Chandler, um, it's okay for everything to coexist, is where I would be at. You can want money, you can want a client, and you can be of service and helpful to people. Um, yeah, I just think after a year of these interviews, and what has stood out is all of that can coexist, and you are the best person, or I'm the best person for the person in front of me, because we're together right now.
Mm,
It would be silly for me to assume that they are going to go to somebody else. It would be silly for me to assume um, that they are just uh, going to find the resources or help or support they need. Most people aren't necessarily looking for that. Most people are going through their challenge. They're occupied with whatever problem is in their life or the thing that's taking up their time. And we get to serve whoever is in front of us. Let what comes through come through. And so for me, the distinction there with service is I can help somebody, and I'm not going to, I have no illusion that we're going to solve everything in one go in simply a couple sessions. I can serve them, I can make a difference, and there's an opportunity, if they choose, if they want more of that, to continue to do committed work, because that's the thing that will change their life. Um, yeah, does that answer that question?
yeah, I really hear you speak on this notion, and I think this was repeated a lot during the AJC program that we were both in, on this idea around two things can be true at once, right? That it's not all or nothing, that there isn't just one way of doing something, right? I mean, even to quote Steve Chandler that you referenced, tools not rules, right? He would say. So that's what I kind of hear you saying, is that you've seen so many different ways of being as it relates to client creation and service, as well as you've heard so many different people share so many different ideas and distinctions and ways of going about it, that you've now come to see that they can all coexist, that there is no one way, and that maybe it varies and depends depending on who you're with, right? Like that's what I
Mm-hmm.
hear you saying. It's like you're so present with who you're with that that ends up being the clue or the cue to how to move forward. And sometimes we don't know what that looks like. Most times we don't know what that looks like until we're there. So
Yeah.
maybe a follow-up question that comes up for me then, on the back end of what I'm hearing you say, is, do you feel like you're more in touch with that present moment and the person that's there? And how do you go about catching yourself when you lose that presence?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think of it as a couple different ways. So for me, it's there's always just a certain synergy with somebody. Just as you can have friends, and maybe there's certain friends that you would go to the movies with, another person maybe you'd go to a concert, or someone you would hang out and talk at a cafe. There's just different people and friends in our lives who we do different things with. There's some friends we might not go to a concert with because they might not be a concert goer or just the right energy for that. And so to me, it's very intuitive of whoever we're with. There's just like a certain synergy there.
Mm,
And then, so that's the way I think of it when I'm with somebody. And then in terms of this context of service, I think it's so easy to get locked into I want to create a client, I would like more money, and that's an entry point. And then to me the spiritual practice is, well, what's the way in which I would like to serve somebody? What's the way in which I would like to show care or love or help somebody solve a problem? And that's where then I think of it almost like driving a car, right? There's the driver and then there's the back seat. And so we get to ask ourselves, who's driving the car right now? Is the
mm,
person driving the car the I want a client and I want money and that's what the person's going to feel? Or can we simply put that in the back seat and have service driving the car in the front seat? Yes, it's okay to want money, to want a client, but the person driving the car is, I'm going to focus on service. I'm not going to be attached to this person becoming a client. My focus is, how can I serve this person right now? And sometimes, we not sometimes, but all the time, we get to choose what's the way that follows our own energy, our own rhythm in the way in which we serve. So for instance, sometimes I'll write a handwritten letter to somebody because I care about them and I want them to know that, or I haven't spoken to them in a while. Some people, I might just send them a funny video. Other people, I may just ask how they're doing or how their business is because I care about them. And there isn't an attachment to them becoming a client. And really wanting to connect them with what they need or what would be helpful. Sometimes that's a conversation, sometimes that's a resource. And so that's the way I think of service. And that's the way I think of, yes, we can have that entry point of, I want to create a client, I want more money. No matter who I've interviewed and talked to, even those that are close to seven figures, they still wake up and they go, where's my next client coming from? And so then they go into, what can I do to be of service? What can I do to make a difference for
mm.
somebody, to solve a problem in somebody's life? Because if I don't show up, they might never solve it. So does that answer that?
Yeah, yeah. I find that piece also that you mentioned at the end is interesting, right? Because when you wake up and you ask yourself, where's my next client going to come from? I find like it's a very different energy that you bring into the universe and the world and life than the energy of who am I going to serve today,
Mm,
right? So I'm curious to ask you how do you go about generating like where do you generate those conversations? Like what does that look like for you in your day to day? Do you wake up and do you tend to be excited about, I wonder who I'll meet at the grocery store or at the gym or on your day-to-day errands, or what does that look like in your world?
yeah. So there's a lot of different approaches and ways that I've taken over the years, that sometimes I feel like doing things one day, other days I don't. And so it's less about the thing and more about the practice. Just as sometimes what I'll tell a client, right? Because maybe they want more physical activity and they might do the same thing every morning and then they stop. And I tell them, what if you could think about this almost as a buffet? You can still have your practice of physical activity, but what if you get to choose what that looks like? So you don't get fatigued by doing the same thing day after day and you lose the enthusiasm, the fun. And so I think of it the same way. I think of it as, what is my practice to either serve somebody today, or what's the way I want to contribute to somebody's life? And again, that could vary. So sometimes I'll go on Facebook, and I might just be scrolling and I notice somebody, and maybe they're going through a challenge, and I might simply write them a kind note acknowledging them. Sometimes that's a physical note, sometimes that is just a message to them. Um, I might find a resource, and sometimes it's something I think somebody could use. Other times I may just be listening to something in the morning, right? If I'm priming myself to for my own development, and maybe I'm listening to Steve Chandler, Tony Robbins, or whoever it might be, and I hear something. Sometimes when I'm listening, I think of 1 to 2 people, and instead of questioning that, I just go, "Hey, I was thinking of you, and I wanted to send this your way."
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, this is almost like the buffet of options that continue to build. What are the ways that I get to serve and create? And, part of what I did in the AJC is, at the end of it, I wrote each person a letter. And I did that just from a place of care. And I shared a book that I read to my daughter every day. And so I got everyone a book. And I shared the meaning of that book. And so each one of those letters was on a special stationery. And I chose that stationery for just that person's personality and what I thought. So a lot of thoughtfulness went into it, where that I wanted people to have an experience of what I do during the week or during the month. Of I think of somebody and may share what I see in them, or some words of wisdom. And
Mm.
so that's what that looks like. Yeah, there's more things that I could say in terms of client creation, but those tend to be the primary ways.
Yeah, I have a few things to say on that, James, because I think you touched on some beautiful points that I believe and feel they're meant to be pinpointed and brought under the microscope. For one, I love the analogies that you use. That's one of the many things I loved about your interviews and what you created here. Like the visuals you always gave were powerful. Like the one you gave of the backseat driver and who's driving the car, and what you just said right now of the buffet. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it for those listening, including myself, on that. It goes back to the first point you said, that depending on who you're with and what comes up for you in that moment, and when service is driving the car, you will know through your presence, you will know through your listening, you will know through the synergy and the energy between both humans that are there, or the people that are there. You will know what buffet or what option to pick, right? So I love that you gave us a little insight into how you live your life and how things come up for you and you act on them, and those end up being one of the many ways that you tend to generate conversations. It doesn't surprise me either, because who wouldn't answer to those things, right? Especially when you're coming from that place of, like you said, care, genuine love. And I was one of those receivers of those letters that you mentioned, and you could tell when you read it, it was so beautifully written, and there was so much care, intention, time, and effort that was put into that it just makes you want to be with that person even more. It makes you want to speak to that person. It makes you want to create a rapport and a connection and a relationship with that person. In this case, that person being you. And we cannot forget, coaching is a relationship business. A lot of businesses out there that are not coaching are also based on relationships, right? We can take real estate, you can take, and investments and different kinds of service businesses are very much based on relationships. People like to spend money, invest money, work with professionally people who they get along with and like and feel connected to. And what I'm hearing from you is those different options that come up for you are ways to generate that connection, ways to lead and breed to connection. But then the piece, and this is where the question is going, is that piece on attachment. Because we'll take the example you shared a little bit about the glorious book that you gave us to all of it, that I see right there behind your head. Um, I know the whole story of how you went and the lengths you went to go create this opportunity for all of us, and I'm open for you sharing it if you feel it fits here. The question is more on the side of attachment and involvement, right? Because we go back to coexisting. We go back to two things can be true at once, right? And one of the many learnings I've gotten is that we can be highly involved and highly detached. So whether it's through the story of how you got that book or writing all these letters to all your peers or other examples that come up for you, what has that delicate dance looked like for you between high
Hmm.
involvement and high detachment?
Yeah. And for anyone that would like the story on the book and the letters, I have the video of that, of my original sharing of it. And so just shoot me a message and I'm happy to get that to them. Um, I'm going to say a few different principles that I follow that I've just picked up or have been taught to me over the years. So the first one is HILA, HILA, and that comes from a mentor of mine named Brad Newman. And he was in sales. He worked with Eli Wild and was mentored by him. Eli Wild is Tony Robbins' top sales guy. I think in one day they did 9 figures. And one of the principles that Brad taught me is HILA, high intention, low attachment. And so that's a framework that I always keep top of mind. Is I have high intentions in all that I do, sincerity, wanting to make a difference in somebody's life, and my attachment is low. And the other principle that comes in there is I can't want something more than somebody else wants it themselves. That goes with whether somebody is not a client or if they are a client. I can't want something for a client more than they want it themselves. And so attachment really starts to appear when we're feeling like we're trying to drag this person along, bring them someplace, right? And so you talked about how as you're, learning from Stephen McGee, the presencing, right? Being present with what's there. And if we're trying to drag somebody somewhere, get them somewhere, it takes away from actually working with what's there. Um, I was on a call and Steve Chandler, he talked about how he didn't have a specific agenda for a client, that the
Mm,
client is in charge of the agenda. And somebody was like, "Well, where am I leading this person?" And Steve Chandler just said, "What am I leading the pollywogs, like the little frogs? Like, am I supposed to be bringing them somewhere?" When coaching is being present with someone, working with what's coming up, and supporting them to move to where they want. Right? They're the creator of the agenda. And so I can't want something for someone more than they want it themselves. And so to me, that's where I kind of think of I'm feeding the birds. I'm asking questions, I'm making invitations, and it's very clear whether somebody is reciprocating or not. And if somebody is reciprocating, now we're in a dance. And so if somebody's not reciprocating, then I'm not following through. Sometimes somebody misses a message or people get busy. And so I may ask a very clarifying question to somebody. I may say something along, I may ask the same questions and they're the same question I had. And I might say, this is over messaging, but I might say, hey, I saw that, I wanted to ask again, or I saw that we missed this message. Please let me know either way. When you had that question, please let me know either way, people feel a freedom. And sometimes they'll just be like, oh yeah, I missed this. Let's set up the time. Or they might say, I'm actually good for now. And to me, that's actually very freeing. To me, it's actually more freeing when I'm not attached to getting the client, because then I have the energy to serve. And
mm,
when I'm attached and so focused on this one person, um, I'm not dragging them along. I'm actually dragging myself down rather than serving the many people that I could be, who are actually waiting for me. Um, and that's where the phrase that I got from another mentor is, some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. And so
mm,
if I know that I'm here on this earth to do my thing, whatever that might be, but I know that it's serving other people and helping them, and the ways that that looks are different depending on the person. Well, if someone doesn't want to take part in that, so what? Someone's waiting. So I will move on to the other person. I will share something good with them. I might send a resource, so then I'm able to energetically let go, know that I've done my part, and I get to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much gold in that, my brother. There's so much gold in what you're saying. I really resonate with that, and I've really experienced, especially recently, that feeling that opens up, and the way the pressure decreases, the way things stop feeling so tight and so big. And I'm not saying that they lose meaning. You just like, I love the word you used, and even in the way you were speaking, it felt so liberating to see you express yourself, and that it does feel so freeing to let go of attachment, to not make it such a thing if someone decides they don't want to work with us, or if someone reschedules, or if someone doesn't refer us, or if someone thinks our fees are outstandingly high, or whatever the thing is. And I remember when I thought, and I used to make those things mean something about me or my coaching, or how great I was. And like you said, the minute you can really, and I say the minute, I think it's more of a process that takes time. And like everything in life, nothing is linear like that. But I do think it's a muscle that we build, right? To do that. So I'm curious to hear you more, to hear you speak more on that, if you're open to it, on terms of that muscle of, you said high intention, low attachment, as you said, the HILA framework. But more specifically, James, I mean, how does one even know when they're attached? Because I
Mm.
try to put myself in the shoes of the listeners, and although I cannot do that so accurately, the question that comes up for me is, I hear what you're saying, I resonate with it, I agree, and I want to get to that place of freedom and liberation so that I can serve more powerfully. I understand that intellectually, but for a lot of us, depending on where our businesses are at, sometimes our mind comes in and kind of points to, but I may require some income, or my business is dependent on this, or I'm not reaching the goals I have set for myself. Or it's like, what has been your way of, because attachment is sneaky, right? It
Mm.
sneaks in. So what has been your way of detecting it and bringing yourself back
Mm.
to that place?
Yeah. So I would say, to me, it's almost like there's an energetic pull. Like I'm really wanting it. And so that's when I notice that, to me, that's an indicator to, sometimes I'll maybe I'll be at a computer and I'm writing or I'm thinking, and like you said, there can be those thoughts that come up. And in the Jamie Damsker interview, like he spoke about, whether somebody reaches the seven figures, whether they have the corner office, uh, that little voice, these things that occur, they don't go away. So it's less about never experiencing it again. It's more about shifting our relationship with what occurs when it occurs.
Mm,
So instead of, it's okay to really want a client, to want to make more money, to want to have your goal. And let's say I'm on the computer at my desk and I'm working on something, and maybe I'm in a message and maybe somebody hasn't replied, or I notice I keep going back to a person. Sometimes I use it as a pause and I go, am I like really attached to this? Um, and I'll notice it and I'll physically lean back. I'll lean back and I'll just take a breath. And to me, that's a release. And sometimes, I believe it was in Jonathan's um, interview, where he said he'll even be on with someone, and on a piece of paper he'll literally write, "I don't need this person as a client." He'll write that on a piece of paper while he's on, to help detach himself.
mm,
So I really love that. So similarly, I will find myself, I'll just lean back, even if I'm on a call with somebody. If I notice that I'm very attached to them becoming a client, or this call having to go a particular way, I'll literally lean back And I'll just take a breath and roll my shoulders. And then let's say I'm going about my day and I would like to create a client or I'd have a goal. That's okay. Then what I like to do is, instead of feeling stuck on it having to have a particular way or I'm searching, that's where maybe I'll meditate for 5 minutes or I'll put on a meditation or I'll go for a walk. To me, it's about getting the energy moving. Walking is very helpful for that. And I may just notice what I'm grateful for, or I change the environment. And I find that all of a sudden, maybe somebody pops into my head, or I'm listening to something and then I want to share it. And so for me, it's about building that sincere connection without
Mm.
it having to be about, I need to have this person as a client, or I need to have a client right now. So while that can be the entry point, we don't want that to be the continuation. So it may still be there, right? Just as, how would I say this? Like, I don't know, the metaphor that I have coming up right now is sometimes people will date or they'll have sex or they'll be more casual and stuff in the beginning, and that's the way that they know connection. And eventually they reach a point, though, where they're probably desiring a more um, significant relationship, someone that they really feel connected with, um, more depth with somebody that, well, yeah, that those casual relationships may have been the thing that got them connected or more confident or whatever it might be. Eventually, as part of their growth, they reached a point where they were wanting more depth. And so I think of it kind of similarly. You can want a client, you can want to hit your goal, you can want money. That's okay. It's an entry point, and something begins to shift, or you get to lead that shift, where then you're going, okay, I really want this to be something that I enjoy. I want this to come from a place of care. I want this to come from a place of love. So what's the way in which I create that? Similar, if, I know I use the casual relationship version, but let's say someone's just in a relationship and maybe they do want more depth. They want to be able to share. Sometimes you just have your entry point and then you get to choose where you want to lead things. There's the relationship, and then there's actually the relationship that I'm leading and building, as opposed to just letting it be on autopilot. There's some authorization that starts to happen to have more of a sense of your control. You're not trying to control the situation. You're trying to have a sense of your own creation and authorization.
Yeah, I resonate with so much of what you say, and there's so much gold. I'm trying to think which path to take and take us through, but I'm just taking a second to really take it in, because I find that you articulated beautifully, and I also, again, I like the metaphor that came up for you there as well. I think it's a good way to see it. And I think the theme so far in our conversation today that is really keeps coming up, I think, is on that piece of how one cannot exist without the other. And I think what I mean by that is, no matter which way you go about generating conversations, that's the path, it seems to be, at least, to client creation. And what you're trying to say to us is, you can have those goals, you can have those wants, you can have those desires. That's all healthy and okay and fine, but don't make it only about that. That's not the place you come from. The place you come from makes a big difference. The way you build the relationship makes the difference. And then whether it moves there and feeds those goals, feeds those wants, that's not up to you. That's what I'm hearing you say, right? And I think it goes back to what you said previously that I didn't comment on the SW to the power of four. Some
Mhm.
will, some won't. So what? Somebody's waiting. I think that is a powerful reminder of, and even the example you shared, your friend who, or your mentor who writes on the piece of paper, creating that detachment. I think all this points back to, if that side or that part is not in my control, and let me not put my energy and my attention into that. That's what I'm really hearing from this whole, if I had to kind of start summarizing what you've been sharing. Um, is there something you want to add to what I just said? Because I want to switch gears a little bit, but before I do that, I want
Mhm.
to know if from this section and from our conversation so far, there's anything else you want to add.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say that yeah, I think it's just something that occurs on the path is that we all have our entry point. It is what it is, and then somewhere along the way, you start wanting to have you want to start creating it in a way that you enjoy, that really serves you, serves people. Um, but most importantly is really taking care of your own needs first. That's why people serve in so many different ways. And just like there can be a coach, sometimes there's a coach or the mentors or just people in life who are the type that'll say like the abrupt thing that snaps somebody out of just like whatever is occurring for them. I was on a call with a client the other day. They have yesterday. They have a big personality, and they're the person that'll just say whatever the thing is. Different than a coach that's gonna different than just a coach who's gonna say something truthful to somebody. They just have such a way of not caring how the other person responds. They're the type of person that is the type that would shake somebody and be like, wake up, like, what are you doing? I'm not that type of person. And so I love that everyone can serve in different ways. I'll say the truthful thing to somebody, but like I said, I'm not going to go off of wanting it more than they are. And so to me, everyone serves in so many different ways that they just get to tune into the ways that they like to serve. That's what's going to make it fun for them. Some people love to talk to groups and businesses, and some people prefer to stay one-on-one just working with the owner.
Mm.
And there's just so many ways people want to serve. That's what I'm saying is the more you know yourself and the ways that you like to serve and experimenting with that, the more options you have, and the more you're taking your own sense of self-authorization for your own path. And when you do that, you aren't as stuck on, I have to do this thing this program's saying so that I can create a client. All of a
Mm.
sudden the whole world opens up when you have many of your own ways to just make a difference in people's lives without an attachment to them becoming a client. You just know that you're making an impact, and that's a satisfying thing.
Yeah, I love that addition, man. I really do. I think that also kind of hits on that point that we talked about previously on how to let go of that attachment. Sometimes the how only makes sense if we understand why we're even doing it. And I think, like you just said, of the freedom that comes from it, our willingness to want to serve, our I think the word that really stood out to me was even you said tuning in, right? And I was thinking visually because I know you like the visuals. I was thinking about like the old radio stations where you can kind of tune to
Mm,
the station. I find that what I'm taking away from this conversation so far is depending on who I'm with, depending on the context, depending on the format, like you say, I can be so present in that moment to tune in and kind of find the signal that gives me the cue or the clue to how I want to show up. Sometimes
mm,
that may look like one-on-one, like you were saying. Sometimes that may look like sending someone a resource if I'm alone on a walk. Sometimes that may look like calling someone up just because I thought of them. Sometimes that may look like shaking someone and, like you just said, telling them something, right? So as in, what I'm really taking away from this is that everything can coexist. Multiple things can be true at once. There isn't just one way. There isn't just one style. That what really matters is the place you come from, being highly involved and highly detached, or like you said, Hilla, high intention, low attachment, really having that genuine care and this willingness to create impact. And then from that place, trusting. I think that's the other piece I hear as well. And I think that's the question I wanna start shifting gears towards is a little bit that trust. What role has trust played for you in the making and the building and the creation of your coaching business?
mm. I think trust shows up in a few different ways. One is when I can know that I'm doing things that I believe make a difference. that helps me, I don't love this phrase, trust myself more, but really just honor myself more, acknowledge myself more in the way that I operate without it having to look like all the different ways people are doing things, right? Because it's so easy to be online and see people doing things in so many different ways that we can think, oh, I'm not doing it the right way, or I need to do it this way. So the more that you can know yourself, you trust yourself in your process, and to trust the results that you're seeing. And what I mean by that is this actually, is this working? And so I used to work in a career office. Um, and what we tell people is there'd be certain stages to see whether something's working. You know, in a career sense, people would make a resume, they submit it, and then it'd go to the interview process, and then it'd go to being hired. And so let's say they made a resume and they submit it, but they aren't getting any interviews. Something's going on with the resume. However, let's say the resume is fine and then they are getting interviews. We know the resume works, but they aren't getting a job, so something's happening in the interview. If they're getting the job, then all these different things are working. So similarly, first, what are the phases? You are, in the morning, who are you choosing to be of service to or have care for? And as long as you are creating conversations with people, that's a reflection that your service is working. You're creating conversations, you're reaching out. That's great. You have that part down. You can trust that that's fine. Now, let's say you're having conversations with people, but all of a sudden you're feeling like a nonprofit do-gooder where nobody's becoming a client, then something's happening in that phase where it's not actually translating into a client or a paying client. Now, not everyone is going to become a paying client, um, but at least some of the people should be. So if something's happening in it, if nobody's becoming a client, something's happening in that phase, right? Where what's the thing that's really going to be of service? And this is where a lot of people get caught, and I think they don't trust themselves because they feel like there's some like moral superiority thing going on of I can't ask for money, I'm simply being of service. Well, you didn't get into, at that point you could just volunteer and go work somewhere. But you're running a business, and businesses get paid and they have clients. That's what makes it a profession. And so the thing that would probably most be of service to people is to actually begin working on the changes they want in their life in a committed way, paying for that. And the reason for that is if you have time in your calendar and you're helping somebody, but then somebody else comes along and they're willing to pay, you're going to move that. You're going to prioritize the person that's paying because they're actually more committed. And so I would say that's where in that phase, trust is about, can you actually trust that you're a business owner, you're a professional, and treat yourself that way, and treat these conversations in this way like a professional? Now, let's say somebody says they are interested in working together and doing that. So we have first phases of reach out, great. You can trust yourself, that's fine. Someone says they are interested in doing the work in a committed way, you can trust that you're having conversations that actually serve somebody, that make an impact. Now, let's say people want to work with you and you're having a conversation about working together. If people aren't actually following through and paying, then that means something's happening in that area. And so developing your process so you can trust yourself that you have a process that somebody is going to have the confidence to sign up to work with you. So that's where I think of trust. I think of it as phases. Can you trust that your process is working? And that's how it would work in a coaching realm. And can you also trust what the person is telling you? At the end of, even during I'll do this during paid sessions or free sessions. Has this been helpful to you? Yeah, this was helpful. Great. What was most helpful? Oh, we covered this, this, and this. Excellent. Would you like to talk about doing more of this? Yes. Well, let me trust all of those things that that person just said, because it's so easy for people to go into um, saying things like, I don't know if they really meant it. Am I good at what I do? Am I worth it? Has this made a difference in this person's life? Well, just ask them and trust what they're telling you, because that also helps you trust yourself more, because you're actually hearing it back, that you're good at what you do, and that you've made a difference. Did that cover what you were wanting to talk about in the realm of trust, or did I go out into left field?
I trust that what you shared was exactly what needed to emerge, my friend. I also see the connection in that last part specifically back to attachment. Because I find that the only reason I wouldn't trust what the other person is saying is if I'm making it mean something about me, or as if I'm attached to how something landed, right? If I ask, in your example, what did you take away from today? Or what did you hear in what I said? Or was this helpful? And a person starts saying yes and starts sharing what they took away, but we start questioning it, or we start not trusting it. There's some attachment there. That's one sneaky way of attachment coming in. So I love the way there was a link to that. I really have loved this conversation because, and I'm loving this conversation because I find that it is hitting on so many parallels that just work together, right? Again, I think everything we're talking about today is not just one parameter of the beauty of this profession we call coaching. It's they all kind of coexist and work together. Some listeners may have experienced more things more than others, and so on and so forth. And there is no right way, right? I think it's important for us to say that you and I are sharing our experiences. You're sharing your experiences, your ways that you've seen things work and not work, your learnings, and that, as Steve Chandler would say, this is a continuous journey, right? Continuous improvement that never ends. And I find that that's a lot of also why you might have started this, right? So I think this leads me to my last question, James, before we wrap this up, around back to the not the why behind this, but the learnings that came to you from this. What are you taking away? To go to your question, what are you taking away not only from today's conversation, but from, and this is a different question to the first one I asked you. I don't want it to be what changed for you as it relates to conversations. This last question is more, what are you taking away from this profession? Because these series of episodes that you've done are part of your learning. They're part of your training. They're part of your continuous improvement, right, towards this coaching business that you're building. So what are you taking away from this part of the learning experience that you have so beautifully and generously created for us, but for yourself too?
Yeah, I love that. So I'm gonna speak about that. There is one thing that I wanted to share. Um, you mentioned that there could be other listeners, right? Maybe they're in real estate or something along those lines. Someone might listen to this and they might be going, I am reaching out. I am seeing how somebody's doing. And let's say you sold somebody a house, and maybe you sold it to them 5 years ago. What most people do is they kind of call, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, do you know, are you looking? Are you guys happy with the house? Um, do you know anyone else that's looking? And that's the extent of their conversation. And so I'd really encourage them to listen to not only this audio, but this series of what's the care and love that they bring to the people that they're serving and have served. Because what would it be like for those people to receive a proper handwritten letter in the mail? What would a real conversation be about? Have they had kids? How are their kids doing? Um, and actually them being like, wow, this person sold us a house and they sincerely care about us. We aren't looking right now, and they check in. Um, so, and they're caring about us and the people in our life. And so I just wanted to put that out there, because sometimes people think they're doing something and they aren't doing it to the level that they're truly capable of, or
Mm,
that's truly possible. because of just how different programs are structured, and they say just to reach out. So I wanted to share that. That adds like a depth of service and care that they probably don't get from a lot of people. Back to your original question of what am I taking from this series? What have been some of my perhaps favorite teachings that have stuck out to me? There are so many. I'm just going to do them off the top of my head. So, there's the episode with Julie Brown, and I love her question of where is your needle pointing? Is your needle pointing at the person that you're serving, or is it pointing towards you? AKA, are you thinking about yourself? That has always stuck with me. Anytime I'm with someone, where is my needle pointing right now? And that's just a great way for me to turn it back on the other person to direct my focus where it needs to go. Margot talked about how she uses networking in the way that she networks. I love that one. Jamie Damsker, what really stuck out to me for Jamie, and there's some moments in that interview where I'm asking a question and we're really, really clarifying. And one of the things I love that he talks about, because sometimes as coaches, we can have a question of, can we serve this person? They aren't in my field. I don't know about about this specific business. And I love how he shared when we're actually able to be with the person and operate from a high level view, we're able to truly serve them because we don't need to know all the details of the specifics. And in fact, sometimes if we're getting too detailed, too specific, it actually takes away from powerfully serving them. Sometimes we're trying to be impressive, like, oh, we know this about your industry, and if I know this, maybe you'll hire me. Whereas if we can be honest, yeah, I don't need to know those things to actually serve you. In fact, my silly questions are probably going to help us, help you come up with answers that you didn't see before. So I'm just going to keep riffing on different ones. Amrita is someone who has countless referrals all the time. And I think at the end of the AJC, maybe for even 1 month, she had 25 referrals in like 1 month. And it's like, wow, how does somebody create so many referrals? And so that's what our conversation talked about. And like you're talking about how two things can exist at once, right? They can be true because sometimes we'll hear, well, people will just refer. But then we hear other coaches that will go, well, no, I'll ask, is there anybody that they know? And she creates special ways to ask people if there's anyone in their world, in their life, and she could get 25 referrals in a month. And so what's the difference that would make for somebody to have 25 referrals simply because they're asking, as opposed to not asking, hoping that somebody will just think of it when they're probably just going about living their life.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
I
cool.
could keep going there. I sense, yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that what's cool about what you're saying is that now you're also giving listeners a reason to go and check the series as well.
Yeah.
Like, just because you're wrapping this up, it doesn't mean those episodes are gonna leave YouTube. Am I wrong?
Right. So they're on YouTube, and yeah, they will be on YouTube as a set series for the generating conversations and creating clients. And I've also added them into they're part of a podcast that I'd started before, and then I moved into the series, and now I'm bringing it back where it's all culminating into something that I'm calling You Are the Creator, because that's everything my work has been about. Is somebody could walk by a plot of land or land for sale, and some people just see the for sale sign and the land, whereas somebody else can walk by and they can envision a house, and they can take authorization in creating that house. They can follow something in their head. And so it's about not only people creating clients, but business owners. a lot of times they've had success, but how are they creating in their personal life? How are they creating their own well-being? How are they creating the relationship with their team? Um, so yeah, I'm happy to speak more on that. But that's what everything will be transitioning to, is you are the creator, and that will also be on YouTube and Spotify.
Beautiful, man. Well, I'm excited to see all that. Thank you for blessing us with your gifts, your genius, your knowledge, your quality questions. I always said I love the way you interviewed because you went with whatever emerged. And I loved that. I love that there wasn't like, even though you may have had some things planned out and there was thought and intention behind it, you were willing and able to take things as they emerged. And I always loved that. I loved that. So thank you for demonstrating what that's like and for allowing me to do this today. I got a lot out of this conversation, as I always do. And I'm just grateful to be here. So thank you for having me, and I'll pass it back to you if there's anything that you want to say to wrap this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Julian, for taking the time to interview. And I would say, yeah, for anyone that's listening, you are able to. Chances are you've gone through programs, and you are able to create what you want. You probably don't need more strategy. It's about the way that you are building a relationship with the
Mm,
steps of creating invitations, proposals, um, the relationship with asking for money. And to me, that's where, again, like, you are the creator in all of that. It's not something that you're going to find out there. It's something that you get to create from inside, right? We're always feeling our own thinking. And so there just might be a thinking that gets to be let go of, and get to shift the relationship with whatever it is that you're wanting to do. As a mentor once told me, if you don't enjoy it, it means you're doing it wrong. And I don't necessarily love that phrasing, but I would say it's just an indicator that you get to shift the relationship with whatever it is. And so thank you, Julian. And yeah, if anyone would like to speak more on that, then I'm happy to have a conversation.
thank you, brother.
Perfect. Um, Julian, I know we're winding down here. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, where could they find you?
Usually, Facebook or LinkedIn are the best options under Julian Saad, Saad, and then you'll find me there, and those two are usually the great ones. So yeah, thank you for that.
Excellent. And if anyone would like to reach out to me, it's jmwhiteman.com. Just shoot me a message and we'll have a conversation. Perfect. This has been wonderful. And we'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, I guess we won't be seeing them later technically, because this is wrap up the series, but I'll see you in the new podcast. You are the creator.
Sure.
Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
Thank you.